Imagine dropping a small potted plant. Nothing dangerous, just a gentle 15-centimeter fall onto a soft foam pad. The plant panics. Its leaves fold shut. It thinks it's under attack. Now do it again, and again, and again, 60 times in a row. Somewhere around the 5th or 6th drop, something incredible happens. The plant stops closing its leaves. It has figured out that the falling isn't dangerous. It has learned. And here's the part that broke science in 2014. That plant will still remember the lesson 28 days later. Welcome to Science Curiosity. Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial and mind-bending experiments in modern biology, the proof that plants can learn. Without a brain. Without neurons. Without a single nerve cell in their body. The star of this story is a plant called Mimosa pudica, the famous sensitive plant, native to South and Central America. If you brush a leaf, it snaps shut in half a second. Touch it again, it folds again. It's the plant equivalent of flinching. Scientists have known about this reflex for centuries. What they didn't know is whether that reflex could be trained. In 2014, a researcher named Dr. Monica Gagliano, along with her colleagues at the University of Western Australia, decided to find out. And she did it in the strangest possible way, by borrowing the same experimental methods used to test learning in animals like rats and mice. They built a custom apparatus, a vertical rail, a potted mimosa plant attached to it, a soft foam base at the bottom. Every time the plant was released, it dropped exactly 15 centimeters, a tiny controlled fall, producing a harmless physical shock. That shock triggered the leaf folding reflex. Every single time. Then came the training. The team took 56 mimosa plants, 28 for each condition. They dropped each plant 60 times in a row, with just 5 to 10 seconds between drops. And they repeated that full sequence 7 times across a single day. That's over 400 drops per plant in one session. The prediction was simple. If the plants were just mechanically reacting, they'd keep folding forever. But if they could actually learn, if they could recognize that this specific stimulus was harmless, the leaves would start staying open. Within the first 4 to 6 drops, something extraordinary happened. The plants stopped folding their leaves. They weren't tired. They weren't damaged. The researchers confirmed this using a control group of 16 plants that received only a single drop, and those plants folded normally, both immediately and 8 hours later. The trained plants had made a distinction. They had assessed the stimulus, and they had concluded this isn't dangerous. They had habituated. In plant terms, they had learned. But research wasn't done yet. Researchers wanted to know if the plants understood context. So they split them into 2 groups. Half were grown in high-light conditions where energy was abundant. Half were grown in low-light conditions where every photon mattered. And folding a leaf meant giving up precious photosynthesis. Hypothesis: the low-light plants would learn faster. Because for them, keeping their leaves open wasn't just convenient, it was survival. And that's exactly what happened. The low-light plants habituated faster. They kept their leaves wider open. They stopped folding sooner. Meanwhile, the high-light plants with energy to spare were slower to commit to the new information. Quote from the paper: leaf folding habituation is more pronounced and persistent for plants growing in energetically costly environments. The plants weren't just learning. They were learning strategically. Here's where the study gets interesting. The researchers stopped the experiment. They walked away. They let the plants sit undisturbed for 28 days, nearly a full month. Then they came back. And to make it even harder, they swapped the environments. The plants that had learned in low light were moved to high light. The plants that had learned in high light were moved to low light. Then they dropped them again. The plants remembered. Every one of them. They still refused to fold. The learned behavior from one single day of training, 4 weeks earlier, in a completely different environment, was still intact. For comparison, most insects can only retain that type of learning for about 24 hours. These plants held on to it for a month. This is the question that broke traditional biology. How does something with no brain, no neurons, no nervous system, and no synapses actually remember anything? The paper describes it as memory without neurons, as a residual deformation, meaning the plant likely encodes memory through changes in its cells, possibly in calcium signaling pathways, in the flow of ions across membranes, or in chemical modifications inside its tissues. We're used to thinking of memory as electrical sparks racing across neurons, but Mimosa is telling us there's another way, a slower, quieter, chemical form of memory that has been running in plants for hundreds of millions of years. They don't remember with a brain, they remember with their bodies. This changes everything we thought we knew about intelligence. If a plant with no neurons can learn faster in environments where mistakes are costly and remember that lesson for weeks, then intelligence itself might not require a brain. It might just require life. Gagliano's work has forced scientists to reconsider what learning actually means. Not neurons firing, not brainwaves, just the ability of a living system to change its behavior based on experience. And by that definition, plants are learning all around us, every day, quietly, without a single word or nerve cell. So the next time you walk past a plant, remember what you might really be looking at. Not scenery, not decoration, but a living organism that could be watching, sensing, adapting, and quietly remembering things about its environment that you'll never know. They don't have a brain, but somehow, they don't need one. If this rewired the way you think about life, subscribe to Science Curiosity, and next video we're breaking down another organism doing something you were told was impossible.